Good evening, YouTube. This is Kaylin Stern coming at you with my regular Sunday night dinner. There we go. Good evening, YouTube. This is Kaylin Stern coming at you with my regular Sunday night dinner. And I think my orientation got flipped again, even though I set it to horizontal. Might be up to its old tricks. But what I have is the MRE Star 24-hour ration. This is not menu numbered. I got this off of MRE Mountain early in this year. There have been a few others who have reviewed these, but they had different mains. Mine has chicken noodle stew and Mexican beef. Might be a little hard to see this through this green bag. This does have a peelable seal. These now have a best before date of 2027. So I'm going to go ahead and see if this peelable seal works. This appears to be a lot thinner bag than the older style or the more recent production of the tan bag. I'm gonna have to hold it in between my legs and do this. And it looks like this is going to have a fail just like the US MRE bags, where I literally put my thumb through the plastic instead of into the bag itself. So that means I'm going to have to get a little drastic with it. I ended up cutting through both layers, but that's okay. So MRE Star still puts their entrees in boxes. So there's a chicken noodle stew. This is the Mexican beef. So wrapped inside of the FRHs, there are two of them. There's the MRE Star crackers. An MRE Star branded beverage bag that is very much like the Canadian beverage bag. A single water pouch 125 mils or 4.227 ounces of SOS Food Lab branded water. MRE Star branded oatmeal cookie. And tortillas. They always put 3 smaller size tortillas in compared to the 2 larger size ones that you get in the US mil spec. There's a grape jelly that is not MRE Star branded. A grape drink that's their branded, that's going into the drinking jar. A 1 ounce peanut butter packet, but it's the size of a 1.5 ounce peanut butter packet. And a cheese spread. And this is their lone breakfast item, apple cinnamon oatmeal. I'm just going to put that on top of my mug for a second. Then an orange drink powder that is temporarily going into the drinking jar just for the moment. There is another grape. So got 2 grapes and an orange. And then 2 identical accessory packets. So I will only open up one of those. So the items that I'm obviously not going to be using, I'm not going to use the FRH, but I saved these. Not going to use the beverage bag. I'm not going to use the water because I don't need to. I'm going to put 1 grape and orange drink back into the ration bag. And I think because, let's see, I think the tortillas would go well with the Mexican beef. See, the Carlos Perry's here. Spicy tuna rolls is here. Thanks for dropping in. I'm really interested in trying out this Mexican beef. So I'll keep the cheese spread out. The peanut butter and jelly and the oatmeal are going to go back into the bag. And then the chicken noodle stew will go back into the bag. I'm cheating with the packaging. Got a bluish gray powder for the grape drink. But it does turn purple when you pour the water in. I mix these drinks up first because they take a lot longer to dissolve because they are sugar based. So there is the retort pouch for the chicken stew, or not the chicken stew, but the Mexican beef. Prepper for the ages is here. Thanks for dropping in. I'm going to open up this accessory packet. Again, both accessory packets are identical. So I have their spoon, deep rich coffee. I'm not a huge fan of that. Crushed red pepper. But at least there's coffee in there. A toothpick. A little Smarties, the shorter packet. Got a packet of honey. Got a wet wipe. A packet of Enjoy sugar. And the same brand of creamer. This is a commercially produced one that you typically find either being provided to commercial kitchens by food services companies like Aramark or Cisco, or you can buy containers at Sam's Club. I have seen them there. Got the typical MRE Star branded napkin and the salt and pepper. In the past, some of these coffee packets that were used in other rations did not fare so well. Apparently that one is not opening very well either. It's a spray dried coffee, not a whole lot of it. My crusher is here, thanks for dropping in. It appears that on the retort pouch, they're using 5-digit date codes like you might find on Canadian rations. And because this had a best before date of 27, giving that they usually have a 3-year estimated shelf life, that would be about accurate for this as well. So what I'm going to do, take Cold War Prepper in the house, thanks for dropping in. I'm going to take this into the kitchen. I'm going to put it in the pot. I'm going to take the cheese spread, and I will put those. I'm going to passively warm the tortillas, and the way I'll do that is I'll pour the coffee, or I'll pour the water into my mug to mix the coffee, and then I will put the tortillas on top of that. Then the cheese spread I will passively warm in the kitchen. I am back. I put less water than I normally do in my mug because this deep rich coffee, if you use a typical amount of water, it's rather weak. So I'll put the tortillas on top. suppose if I really wanted to, I could have opened up the other accessory packet and gotten the other coffee out of there. But I'm decided not to do that. So there is really not a whole lot to this particular ration that I can open up now, but I will go ahead and open up the cookie. I'm just using a Walgreens bag to put the trash in since I have the unused items still in the ration bag. I just took a sniff of this cookie and it has the cinnamon scent just like the cookies, the oatmeal cookie does for an actual U.S. ration, military ration. Stirring my grape drink. The items that I will not be using, I do save. They simply get added to my stash. Actually, I could go ahead and open up this accessory packet because there is a slight difference. So that they do occasionally use different branded stuff, like this is a Sunset branded wet wipe. The same coffee, same pepper, same napkin, same coffee, creamer, and sugar, but no honey, and the same Smarties. Just the honey is not included. So just a couple of minor differences in the accessory packets. So MRE Star may be sourcing some of their components from other sources that any other food service company that provides food to other people in a commercial setting as opposed to retail may go with. Just looking at the chat, I don't know of what all that is about. I flipped the tortillas over so that the heat from the mug can hit the other side. I'm not sure if I will open up this crushed red pepper or not. There's probably about the same amount of this as there would be in the crushed red pepper packet in a legit military ration. I usually tend to just hold on to these, add them to my seasoning supply. I got a Ziploc bag full of different seasoning packets from rations like salt, pepper, crushed red pepper, chili powder, things like that. Now I have the cheese just sitting on the stovetop next to a burner, getting a little bit of the passive heat. I'm going to go ahead and take a drink of this grape drink to see if it's the way I like it. Yep, that's the right amount of water for that. Yeah, that's not cool. My electric percolator that was left in the laundry room of my building and set to max, or what it calls strong, that actually brings water up to a boil. And it probably takes about 15 minutes to bring a full pot up to a boil. So only do 5 cups? Yeah, that's not acceptable. I usually just brew enough to fill my mug twice, and that's it. It's a 5-cup capacity with a serving being about 6 ounces, but we all don't just drink a 6-ounce cup of coffee. I have not actually brewed any coffee with it yet because I did not have the filters that I do now. But I actually want to build up a supply of those little filter discs, which are a little bit smaller in diameter than this cookie. So I'll get a few more boxes of those. But I want that to have as a backup plan in case my current coffee maker does crap out. The one thing I do not yet have is a stovetop percolator that you could use on a stovetop or grill or open fire. That will eventually be added because I do want to be able to make coffee on my Coleman stove, or if something should happen to my mom's percolator that she has had for years, it could be a backup plan because we always take that when we go to the lake, plus a coffee maker that we use inside the cabin. And then she has a thermos that can probably hold 3/4 of her percolator capacity. There is Waffles in the house. Thanks for dropping in. I'm going to go get the cheese spread and my Mexican beef, and I'll be right back. I am back. I use this. This is a dome lid that goes with my cookware that I use here. I just drop the retort into it. That way I can carry it out here. I got a paper towel that I'm using to dry it off. get that aside. MRE still chooses to put their tear notches going this way on the short side of the pouch, as opposed to going this way like the packers for the US MREs do. But they put the tear notch, the first one, pretty low. So I'm going to cut one up higher. Let's see what this Mexican beef looks like. Pretty liquidy. So I may not be doing what I thought I would. There's little chunks of beef. There's potato. It looks like a beef stew. It is not at all what I thought it would be. It just looks like almost a beef soup. The broth is your typical beef stew broth. Not a whole lot of a Mexican flavor. There is Tim Riley in the house. And this is the MRE Star 24-hour civilian ration. And the Mexican beef, I think, could use a pickup. So the whole packet of the red pepper went in there. I was hoping that it would be a little thicker. I was actually going to try to put some of it on a tortilla. But I think what I may end up doing, speaking of, I'm going to go ahead and open up these tortillas. They've been sitting on top of my coffee mug. And they do include an oxygen absorber in there. These are smaller flour tortillas. I'm kneading up the cheese spread. I'm going to go ahead and try this with the crushed red pepper. That does give it spice. It does bring the heat. But I would have liked to have taste more of the other seasonings that you would typically find in Mexican or at least Tex-Mex cuisine. But that will have to do. Now, if this were cheese spread with jalapenos, that might have gone in there as well. Yeah, that I would definitely be interested in trying that one. In fact, I was looking at the MRE Star website, and they do have a listing of kosher certified menus, and they look a lot like the La Brioute menus. I know the chicken gumbo is in that lineup. I have had the La Brioute chicken gumbo. So I wonder if MRE Star is actually selling La Brioute. So I would have to buy one of those to see if that is indeed what they're doing. And then they have a full case of the halal MREs, the mil-spec MREs. They are selling those. So I'm going to put 3 little globs of the cheese spread on the tortilla, and then I'm just squeezing it. Then what I'll do, I'm going to dip the tortilla with the cheese in it in the sauce. Yeah, I was looking at that as well, but in order to get that, at least the way I see it on their site, you have to buy the whole case. Now, a channel that I'm subscribed to, he does gear reviews as well as ration reviews. He was sent 2 individual menus that had the pink spoon in them. So they sent them to those for his review. But this promotion that they have is going all month long. And it appears that they may have some new menus. And they are putting Best Buy dates on the back of their ration bags, just like this one has. I actually put a napkin behind it so it might be easier to read it. Best before August 2 of 2027. So I figured this was a 24 pack, and the retort pouch has a 5-digit date code, 2, 4, and then the 3 digits for the actual day of the year. I do like that. That way it cannot be confused with the 2014 or 2004. Yeah, I had that once, DeCarlos, and the funny thing was, I went in there and I was cutting up with the staff, cracking jokes with them, right up until the anesthesia knocked me out. But the last time I was going to have a colonoscopy, it was going to be at a different place other than a hospital. And the nutheads in that place wanted to put some excessive conditions on me for having it done there, meaning that they wanted me to not be living alone. They wanted me to have a permanent guardian, as if I was not capable of making my own medical and other life decisions. Yeah, I don't mind if they say I have to have a driver take me home afterwards. Yeah, I'm cool with that. But to say that I cannot be living alone at all, I have to have someone living with me all the time, and I have to have a guardian? I don't think so. Now, their idea of a guardian is someone like a child or an adult who is living in a group home who cannot live alone at all, or someone who has to have 24/7 care in their home, which was the case with my maternal grandmother when she started losing her hearing. Her health was declining in other ways, so she sold her house and moved in with my parents. So my parents were acting as her guardian in certain aspects of her life. They didn't take absolute control of her finances. They just did some of the things that she was no longer capable of doing, until the dementia started to kick in more and her hearing got even worse. But yeah, these nutheads at that clinic wanted me to live like that. And I, nope, I'm not doing that. Yeah, Although I did get a prep kit for that particular one that I ended up not having. I told my doctor about what they wanted, and he agreed that that was probably not a bad place to go, but he never did book me an appointment for a hospital. So I've been doing the at-home test kits, and so my insurance company allowed me to order one free test kit a year, but for some reason I ended up with two. So I haven't done it yet, but I will go ahead and do that fairly soon. That way my doctor's office can have the result before I go in for my next regular appointment. Then I'll just keep the second test kit as a backup, but the prep that I got consisted of 2 bottles of powder, 2 mixing cups. I would just use the same one. And then you just drink a whole lot of water. Whereas the first time I had a big gallon jug, which you could add the flavor packets to. I should have added all of the flavor packets and not just one. But, you know, you start out taking a laxative, and then you go in with the prep, and then you have to be on a liquid diet, no dark colors, for however long you're instructed to do so. And then at a certain point, you don't drink even water. In fact, the morning of my colonoscopy, I only took a few, like 2 or 3 pills and just enough water to get them down, and then that was it. Of course, later this month, early next month, depending on, I'm not sure if I will go ahead and get a mammogram. I had it done last year. So I may skip that this year. Of course, that takes a back seat to my siblings and I having to maybe step in and help my mom out, because she fractured some bones in her right hand as she was getting, she wanted to get one can out of her pantry, but some other cans fell down and just smacked the back of her hand. And so she's been wearing an immobilizer with an ace wrap around it. So when we went to a funeral yesterday, she opted to use her transport chair instead of her walker, because it's hard to push a walker with just one hand. So she's doing pretty much everything left-handed, and when you're right-handed, using the left is not so easy. But once at her next appointment for that, we'll find out if she can get rid of that immobilizer splint that she's wearing now. Maybe go something different, like one of those braces that you can just put on and take off. And then she may do some physical therapy because she's not moving that hand much at all, other than her fingers. But the x-rays indicated clean cracks and not not a more serious break where it would require surgery. So the hope is that the bones will just mend themselves on their own, and then she'll do some physical therapy to get the muscles going again. Yeah, as soon as you could get your prep stuff, that way you don't have to scramble for it. You already have it on hand, and you can just mix it and start going after it. Yeah, considering she will be 82 in a few days. She's actually doing fairly decent. Getting dressed and undressed with just one hand is proving to be a bit of a challenge. But maybe that Polish stubborn streak will kind of help her heal up a little bit. After the service, my sisters and I stayed at the funeral home because it would have been too difficult to try to push her wheelchair through the cemetery to where my oldest sister's father-in-law was buried. But my great niece was there and she took video. So my mom would get to see that. And then it was live streamed so that those who could not come could watch the service. And then there was a lunch that was provided after the service. So one of my sisters actually brought my mom's food to her. And they had some pretty good coffee there. I was happy with the coffee there. Definitely better than this. Of course, that was regular ground coffee, not instant. my sister and I think one or two others put together a video montage of pictures of her father-in-law. Yeah, he lost his wife a couple years ago, or like closer to 3 now. But people were making jokes about my mom marrying him. You know, after all, he lost his wife, my mom lost her husband, but they just did not want to do that. But they did have an affinity for each other, you know, being widowed and losing someone that you've known for so long. That my mom saw him not as a replacement for my dad, but just as someone with a shared experience. They had something in common. But it was a good turnout. The food was pretty good. I did not eat the meat because they only had ham, but my oldest sister brought me some turkey, so I made myself a turkey sandwich. But the funeral potatoes dish was there. At first I thought it was mac and cheese until I bit into it, and it was, oh, that's funeral potatoes. You can get the freeze-dried version of that from Augustin Farms in a Mylar bag. And I do have a couple of bags of that in my stash. But someone made a big electric roaster pan full of it. And then there was some green beans. Of course, the ham, which I did not eat. And then there are bags of chips and then assorted desserts. You know, they had a really nice setup at that funeral home that we went to. And that was in the town of Sheraton. So it took us about an hour 15, almost hour and a half to get there. The minister who officiated is also a hospital chaplain, so he said that he had to grab his lunch earlier because he had to go to the hospital to visit some patients. And they had a CD or something on their sound system to play the songs that were chosen. They did not have a live singer. But it was nicely done. Yeah, that would be a good move to Carlos to stop the blood thinner because just in case they accidentally pop a blood vessel while they're poking around your innards, you don't want to have a gusher to deal with. So that was what I did yesterday. Friday, after I left the mosque, I ducked into that Hy-Vee that's around the corner. That I'm gonna buy a card, and I thought I only picked one card. I ended up getting two identical ones. So what I did was I just left the other on that table that is that or the guest book was at. I just left the card on top of the envelope. That way, if anyone didn't have a card or wanted one, they could use it. So tomorrow, I'll do laundry. I could have done it yesterday because I got back probably about mid-afternoon. Now we didn't really go anywhere after we left the funeral home. In fact, my brother did not go because he had to work. He works at the Southside Home Depot. So they're still doing plants there. So he's been watering the plants, but they changed his hours. So that's the only reason why he didn't go. But I just didn't feel like doing anything else yesterday. I'd watered my plants on Friday, so I didn't really need to do that. I did that today. But I just didn't feel like doing laundry. So I rode with two of my sisters the two who lived together. And then they dropped me off before taking my mom home. And my air conditioner just kicked off. I don't know if it'll have cooled down enough where I can go ahead and crack the windows tonight, or if I'll just wait till tomorrow. I mean, it was pretty warm yesterday. Got up to 84, at least from what I've seen today. But we got back into Des Moines. It got pretty windy. It was not all that windy when we were in Sheraton. But we're supposed to get rain tonight. So what I did was I put my pitchers that I normally use to water my plants down where rain water can fall into them. I put a couple of other catch trays and my bowl that I always leave out there. See if I can catch some rainwater. Yep, it is still 79. There you go. I hope you saw that, but it's still 79 here. It's my other backup. I have to force the weather to update on it. It will not update on its own. But it's still my backup. Oh, yeah. In fact, on the radio this morning, Massachusetts, the whole state is in moderate to severe drought. In fact, many parts of the state are implementing water restrictions. Not just like the lawn watering ban we had here for a time. You know, or can't wash your vehicle on your driveway or wherever you do it on your property. And we had that for a time, but they are getting even stricter with their water conservation. Yeah, I remember back in the day, we would not be running air conditioner in October. So Friday when I went to the mosque, one of the first things I did was I turned the ceiling fans on down in the basement. That way there can be air circulation down there. I'm going to squeeze the rest of this cheese in here. Yeah, I got fairly warm yesterday. We came close to hitting a record high, but we didn't, so I'm happy about that. But it's supposed to start cooling off, like in the 60s for highs here. Mother Earth Garden Club is here. Thanks for dropping in. Booger Butt, thanks for dropping in. I hope you're able to catch the replay of the Ratatouille review, since you didn't get to watch it live. Oh, Stanton Shenanigans is here. Thanks for dropping in. So this is meal one of the MRE Star 24-hour civilian ration. So the Mexican beef was definitely not what I expected. I put in the red pepper flake, but it still lacks the other Mexican style flavors. And because it's fairly soupy, it would have been difficult to put it on the tortillas. So I just put the cheese spread on the tortillas, and then I was dipping that into the sauce. So I still had some cheese spread left, so I just squeezed it in there. Definitely did not need salt. I could have put pepper in there, but that's really not the flavor that I would have preferred. I think a little more cumin, a little more chili, maybe some Mexican style herbs in there. That would have been nice. I mean, on its own, without anything added, just tastes like a beef stew. And the other entree in this ration is chicken noodle stew. So this ration had 2 coffees, the deep rich coffee. And a lot of us have feelings about that. But 3 drink powders, 2 grape and 1 orange. So the crackers are left for next week. The grape jelly and peanut butter are left for next week. No other dessert. So what I may do, see, that oatmeal is apple cinnamon. I think what I may do instead is just get a dessert out of my stash and save that oatmeal for when I actually want a breakfast. Now these do not have these MRE star rations don't have the same amount of food or the same calorie value as, say, 3 regular MREs or a first strike ration. You get only 2 accessory packs, so you'd have to save your spoon from one of the meals. So you get just 2 napkins, 2 toothpicks, 2 sets of seasoning, salt, pepper, and the the red pepper flake, 2 moist towelettes, and then one of them had a packet of honey, and then each one had the Smarties. So that, it's a little bit lacking in that regard. So I am hoping that the chicken noodle stew will actually be pretty decent. Yeah, I have had those cobblers before, and what I like to do when I get those, I break up the cookie, crumble it up, and then mix that in with the cobbler. That's what I like to do with a cookie like this. Yep. I still have my crock pot that I've had for almost 30 years, I think. I got it not all that long after I moved into my first apartment. And when I came back to Iowa after leaving Arkansas at the end of '87, I stayed with 2 sisters who were sharing a house way out on the east side that was a mile from the nearest bus stop, so it was way too far to walk just to go hop a bus. So the bus service was not as good then as it is now. So I was basically relying on them to take me places. But then after something happened that I talked about in previous streams, I decided, no, I had enough of this. I got to get my own space. I can go where I want, when I want, and I don't have to walk a crapping mile just to take a bus. So someone gave me that little crock pot, which still works. It almost holds as much as my Instant Pot Duo, but that eats up more watts, even though it takes less time to cook whatever I put in it. But the slower runtime of the crock pot is something that some foods you just got to do. Low and slow, let it go all day. Yeah, I finished up at the end of December of '87 at University of Central Arkansas, where I studied Spanish as my major. But they did not do a December graduation ceremony, so I'm not going to bother going back down there in May of '88 just for that. So they just sent my diploma by snail mail. So that's pretty much how that went. Yeah, I've done goat meat bone in that way. Several years ago, someone gave me a quarter of a small turkey, and it was literally frozen when it was cut into quarters at the Hillel Grocers. That's where that turkey actually came from. So then I put it in another bag while it thawed out, and then I just put it in my crock pot with whatever else I wanted in there and just let that go for several hours. Yeah, that's the way it was all over the place. What some students up here did, they just used their pictures or maybe a short video clip. I think those are sent in, and then those are put up on websites, as well as each individual student, if they had any social media accounts, and they would put it there. Yeah, that was some weirdness going on with that. Yeah, most of that year, part of 21, it was just plain weirdness going on. Some things have really never have been the same since. I just finished that. I'll call it a beef stew. That needed a little help. Thanks for dropping in. Good to see you again. For those who may not be subscribed to Stanton Shenanigans, she has done reviews, usually in her kitchen instead of sitting at a table like I do. There's a look at the inside of the cookie. There's definitely a hint of cinnamon in this cookie, which I like. It gives it a little bit more flavor than just a plain oatmeal cookie. Now, speaking of little ones, my in-law great nephew Braden was very active before and after the service, but he was pretty quiet during. Even at his young age, he may have understood some of what was going on, especially when he saw great grandpa in the casket. And his older brother Liam was probably explaining some stuff to him. He was definitely enjoying himself yesterday. There are a couple other kids, but they were older than my two in-law great nephews. And my nephew who is married was there with his wife yesterday, but my other nephew was not available. So he wouldn't have got the day off. Since the man who died was not a closer relative. Of course, when my dad died, I had a hard time getting time off. But I convinced him that I needed the time off because I needed to be with my mom. Some people don't always understand that until they personally have to deal with it in their own life. But the way it worked out, I got 5 days because I was not scheduled during a weekend anyway. So that worked out. Was my oldest sister's husband is dealing with cancer himself. And from what we understand, it's a pretty aggressive cancer. But he was feeling okay enough to be there. But someone else took what would have been his spot as one of the pallbearers. Because sometimes he just can't do a lot of heavy lifting. The casket was on a cart inside the funeral home, but would have had to be physically carried to the gravesite from wherever the hearse was able to park. Since I didn't go to the cemetery, I have no idea how that was, but from what I understood, from the way my sisters are talking, it's pretty difficult. You know, the ground is not real flat around there. So they would have had to physically carry from the hearse to the gravesite instead of pushing it on a cart. know how they're going to deal with his estate, or how that's being handled. That's up to his adult children to deal with that. Yeah, my oldest sister, you know, being a spouse of one of them, when she's not at work at the school that she's been at since August of '84, you know, she and the other spouses of his children are probably going to have a little bit of input in how things are taken care of now that he's been buried. But our lives move on. Some of their family still, they may not live in the town of Sheridan itself, but they live in and around the area, either in the suburbs or somewhere in between. But that part of the family used to have frequent get-togethers. So they may still do that. Whether or not they're less often or where they'll do it, they'll have to figure that out. I do not anticipate having to leave the city anytime soon. But like yesterday proved, you never know what's going to happen until it happens. So I really didn't hear about it until Thursday. I found out that he had died a few days earlier, but I didn't know when the funeral was going to be until Thursday. But, so, yep, I'm free. I'll come. So, like I said, Friday after I left the mosque, I ducked into a Hy-Vee and bought a card just because I wanted to. My mom's birthday is on the 7th. So I have a card for her, and I have a gift. Now I just wait to find out if we're actually going to go hang out with her on her birthday, or if we're going to do it another day. Depending on people's schedules, with two of my sisters not working. One because she had gone on long-term disability after having had to have her ankle surgery done again. So I think she has made the decision to not try to get another job. She's still going to physical therapy. So I think she's gone on to permanent disability. And then my one sister, who did work for the TSA, she did the buyout. They called it a deferred resignation or something like that. It'll be kind of like someone who signs a contract for a specific period of time, but then their contract gets bought out, so they get the remainder of what would have been their salary, either in a lump sum or a series of payments, but they no longer go to that job. So that's what my sister did. So she may, I think because she got her last payment not all that long ago, before the shutdown, she can file for unemployment. I think she will get it because of the way in which this was handled. Not a typical resignation of free will, basically. It was forced. So she took the option where she would get paid, just can't go to work. She lost her security clearances, but now she's free to pursue other options. And because she and my other sister not working, they can take my mom to appointments while my oldest sister is at work. And with my brother's schedule change, he's working when my mom would typically have her appointments, so he can't do it. And I've tried to convince my mom to apply for paratransit, but she hasn't done that yet. And my cat just decided to come in. She's on the other side. She's actually behind me out of camera view. I could slide my tray over a little bit. Oh. Yeah, you caught a glimpse of her, and then she just moves. Pumpkin? You want to see a pumpkin? You want to see the kitty? You want to see the kitty, Pumpkin? She walks back and forth under my chair. Goof of a cat. Yeah, you're a goofy cat, Pumpkin. You're a goof. So you got to see her anyway. Even if for a little bit. I'll have to put up some videos of just her. But when she does something really goofy, I don't always have my phone handy to shoot a video or even take a picture. Or she'll start to do something, but then when I get ready to shoot a picture or video, she takes off. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Pumpkin. She's underneath the chair. Pumpkin. Yeah, that's what she does. She just walks back and forth under my chair. That's just what she does. But sometimes she won't come out at all. She'll sleep through the whole street. Usually in my bedroom. That's where she likes to sleep. It must be less noisy in there. My tower fan is fairly quiet even on high. Yeah, I'm going after these cookie crumbs because they're there. Finished off my coffee. And this mug came from Delicious over in Poland. I would like to get a replacement for my Mike Kreischer Reviews mug. But I don't know if that's something I could buy off of him. Of course, I would still love to get a replacement for my foreign MRE mug, which I doubt I'll be able to find. Is that one busted. That one broke first, and then my Mike Kreischer mug busted. There's Germs Emery. He's got some merch. Maybe I'll get a hold of one of his. But I like using mugs that came from other YouTubers, at least for my hot drinks. Of course, the drinking jar, this is my second one. The first one, I made the mistake of putting hot water in it one too many times. I was able to salvage probably 3/4 of the cocoa that I had put in it. Apparently, some of these are not as heat tolerant as others. Yeah, I could run them through a dishwasher, wash them in hot water in your sink, but no to boiling water. So that one my mom gave me. So I bought this one off eBay. It doesn't have the same design as the one that my mom gave me, but I just have not had the heart to tell her that I broke the drinking jar that she gave me, and I bought a replacement. I think that'll just be between you all and me. So if I'm going to do two hot drinks, I'll just get another mug like that, or maybe one of my metal cups. Or I have the Ozark Trail insulated cup that doesn't have a handle, but I can put hot drinks in it, and I've done that. It's made of metal so it can take it. it would be nice to have another, mugs from a couple more channels. But in time, that may happen. I just don't have the means to do my own merch. I'm not sure what I would want to do anyway, because I would probably want to have a cat on it. And I would probably want to have Mila's picture on her, since she was a very special cat. Not knocking Pumpkin at all, but yeah, I pretty much raised Mila from a kitten from 5 weeks to, she was with me for 18 and a half years. So I still use her picture as profile pictures on all of my different accounts. And when I took her to the Animal Rescue League to have them send her across the Rainbow Bridge, they took paw prints and then they sent them in the mail. So I got that up on the wall. Oh, now Pumpkin is being goofy. She'll put her paws up on my leg, and then I go to pat her head or something, and she takes off. Like she's wanting attention, but then when I go to rub her head or give her a neck scratch, she takes off. She's just a bit goofy. But maybe I like goofy cats. So next week, this chicken noodle stew will go into my belly. Again, this apple cinnamon oatmeal, I may replace it with something else for a dessert. And these flameless ration heaters will go into my stash. And I did not use this water bag because I have tap water. So this will go into a container that I have with similar water bags. It's a hard container, so I don't have to worry about them getting poked, and if somehow they do break, they're inside that hard container. It was almost a couple years ago I got one of those Augustin Farms emergency ration bags, and the, one or two of the water bags actually got poked, and it caused a mess inside of that outer bag. So what I ended up doing was I squeezed out what water was left in those pouches, and then I just drank it, and then I dried off the rest, and then I put them inside of a Ziploc bag. Those are in that container that I have similar water pouches in. And then I dried off all the food bags, and then I just split those up into different buckets. I'd found that one on eBay, and I thought there was something weird about it. Just felt kind of weird before I opened that bag, and it's a good thing I did open it instead of waiting till I actually needed to. That way I could get that mess taken care of sooner rather than later. But both of those spoons will go into my bag of spoons. That is actually getting close to being filled. So I save all of the utensils that I get from rations. Now the other items that were in those accessory packets will also get put into their places. That way I have them for future use when I actually have to get into my stash. Same with that beverage bag that looks exactly like a Canadian beverage bag, just MRE Star branded. It's a gusseted bottom. So the US MRE packers should switch to that if they continue to use beverage bags. They should put in the gusseted bags. They're sturdier and they have better zippers. And even those Smarties candies, those are the type that I put into long-term storage because they don't have the low melt point that candies such as the Brock's candies, Jolly Ranchers, The similar hard candies like that. The fruit flavored lifesavers, I don't store those, but the white ones, the mint ones, and even the orange ones that are made like the mint ones, I store those. Yeah. The Altoids mints, I will store those. The Tic Tacs, I got a bunch of those stashed away. And other mints like that. Yeah, those Smarties will get added to that to go along with the other ones that I have because it's an important morale booster. Especially if you're around kids or anyone in general who just might need that little bit of a morale boost during a hard time. Plus, they can be just a quick energy boost for yourself. That's why I store them. And even that little honey packet, yeah, sure, I could put that on that oatmeal, but anytime I can add honey to my longer term storage, I'm going to do it. Because with the way things are going with bee populations, the more honey I have in stock, the better off I'll be. Especially raw honey. If you can get local, that's even better. Sometimes it's not always possible to do that. But yeah, even that little honey packet will get stored away. For later use. Plus, being a travel size, I could take that with me on a short trip. Although I wouldn't do it if I had to go somewhere where it's going to be cold and I don't have a way to keep it from getting too hard. Of course, even if it's hard, it would be hard to get it out of the packet, but yeah, I would have to use my body heat to probably keep it in a viscous state, but I did try some other honey packets for travel and it was cool. I kept them inside my sleeping bag, which was inside my hammock. But because I use honey like medicine, I have a good swallow of it before I go to bed. It was hard to get it out of those little packets. But at least I experimented with it before having to try to deal with that during an SHTF situation. But now that it is going to be getting cooler, let's see. I'm going to look at the weather again. Tomorrow's high is supposed to be 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Tonight's low is supposed to be 57 Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow's low, 49. So I'll probably wait till sometime tomorrow to shut the air conditioner off because it'll probably still be cycling on and off because of the way that I got it set. But I would like to start having my windows cracked. I can't open them more because if I did, Pumpkin would be climbing the screen, and I don't want to have to pay for a screen replacement. Because that would definitely be on me. Although when I had my bedroom window screen replaced, it had some wind damage, so they didn't charge me for that. Pumpkin just made it worse, but from now on, I can't open a window wide enough for her to even get her head through because she'll try to squeeze her way through. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Pumpkin. Silly little girl. Maybe as she gets older and less active, she won't be as interested in climbing screens. Because that's something that Mila never did. In my previous place, my window sills were only maybe about 6 inches off the floor. She would put her paw on the windowsill and look out. She was never a screen climber, even in her younger days. So I had no problem opening the windows all the way when I wanted to. But Pumpkin is a different cat. She is. Now, she was 2 years old when I got her in 21. So she would probably be maybe a middle-aged cat. But for as big as she is, she's still, when she wants to be active, she is active. I think she is sleeping a little bit more. But I'm still not taking any chances with opening the windows any wider than I do. I may cut down on airflow, but I'd rather deal with that than have my screens messed up and her possibly actually jumping down off the deck or out my bedroom window and who knows where she would end up. Yep, the guy who brought her to me chose me because he didn't think he could trust anyone else to take good care of her. So I hope to have her as long as I had Mila. And I think that'll do for tonight. Then next week I will get into the second meal of this 2024 MRE Star Ration. What I will do after I close this out, I will put the entree that I ate tonight in the description so that when people go to look at it later on, they'll see the description of what the entree was that I chose for tonight. Then next week, I'll go ahead and put in the description that it will be the chicken noodle stew. Again, no menu number on this. Unlike their single meal rations that do have menu numbers. If MRE Star is continuing to do this, I think it would be nice if they did do menu numbers. Because sometimes it's hard to read sometimes it might be hard to read that print through this bag. Especially if it's black on tan. Unlike this white napkin, you can clearly see the MRE Star logo on there. Again, this peelable seal was a fail. I literally put my finger through there. So that's one downside to these peelable seals, they don't always work. But I think I'm going to go ahead and call it good for tonight. I want to thank y'all for hanging out with me for this. I will finish this one off next week. And then after that, I'll probably pull one of my other MREs out of a ration box. It'll either be one of my 2022 case A or my 24 case B or one of my halal ones. And then after that, I may go to one of the two Canadian rations that I recently got. And I'll just keep going from there. But anyway, I want to thank you all for hanging out with me tonight. Hope to see you next time and catch you on the flip side.